let's take a step back. No, not a few thousand years, not even a few million. Go back far enough, and you don't recognize the world anymore. The air feels heavier, the land stretches wider, and everything around you is bigger, way bigger. You're not looking at a large animal, you're looking at something the size of a building. A bird taller than a human is sprinting across open plains. A mammal the size of a tank is shaking the ground with every step. Even the insects look like they shouldn't exist. This is the world of prehistoric land gigantism, and unlike the ocean, where size makes sense because of buoyancy, this is happening on land, where gravity should make being massive a disadvantage. So why did prehistoric land produce so many giants? And more importantly, why don't we see them anymore? To understand this, we have to start with one of the strangest examples. Not a dinosaur, not a reptile, a mammal. This is Prehistoric. And at first glance, it looks like someone tried to build a giraffe. Without understanding how giraffes work, it has a long neck, a massive body, and legs that look almost too thin to support it. But this wasn't some fragile animal. This was the largest land mammal to ever exist, standing over 16 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 20 tons. That's heavier than most dinosaurs you think of. So how does something this massive even survive on land? The answer isn't strength, it's height. See? Prehistoric didn't need to fight. It didn't need to chase. It simply ate what nothing else could reach. Trees that smaller animals couldn't access became its entire food supply. And because it could eat where others couldn't, it didn't have competition. But here's the interesting part. Prehistoric didn't become giant because it was trying to dominate. It became giant because it didn't need to compete. And this idea shows up again and again and again because prehistoric land wasn't just full of giants. It was full of opportunities to become one. Now let's move to something much more aggressive, because not all giants were peaceful. Some of them were built to kill. This is Titanoboa, the largest snake to ever exist. And unlike modern snakes, this wasn't something you could step away from. It was over 40 feet long, weighing more than a car, and it didn't just hunt small animals. It hunted anything it could overpower. So why did snakes get this big? It wasn't just food. It was the environment. Back then, the earth was hotter, much hotter, and for cold-blooded animals like snakes, temperature is everything. The warmer the environment, the more energy they can produce. The more energy they have, the bigger they can grow. And Titanoboa wasn't alone. This same pattern created giant lizards, giant crocodilians, giant reptiles across the board. Because when the planet heats up, reptiles scale up. But reptiles weren't the only giants, because something even stranger happened. Mammals started doing it too. Now fast forward to a world after the dinosaurs. You'd expect things to get smaller, more balanced. But instead, we get something like this. This is Megatherium, a giant ground sloth. And no, it didn't move slowly like modern sloths. It stood over 20 feet tall when upright, with claws the size of knives. This wasn't a passive animal. This was something that could defend itself against almost anything. So why did mammals suddenly start becoming giants? Because something was missing: predators. After the dinosaurs went extinct, there was a gap, a massive gap in the ecosystem. And when that happens, life fills it. Mammals didn't just evolve to survive, they evolved to replace. And without constant pressure from apex predators, they had room to grow. Bigger bodies, more strength, more dominance. And once one species gets bigger, everything else has to follow, because now size becomes the new standard. And this is where things start to connect. Because prehistoric gigantism isn't random. It's a pattern, a repeating cycle. When conditions allow it, life scales up. And when life scales up, everything else has to keep up. Bigger prey creates bigger predators. Bigger predators force even bigger prey. And the cycle continues until something breaks it. Now let's talk about something even weirder. Because not all giants were expected. Some of them shouldn't have existed at all. Take terror birds, massive, flightless birds, standing over 10 feet tall, with skulls designed to crush bone, and speed that rivaled land predators. This wasn't a dinosaur, but it might as well have been. So how does a bird become a top predator? Simple. There was nothing else stopping it. In isolated environments, like prehistoric South America, mammalian predators weren't dominant yet, so birds filled the role. And just like everything else, they got bigger. Because again, size solves problems. It removes threats, creates dominance, and most importantly, it ends competition. But here's the problem with gigantism. It works until it doesn't, because being massive comes with a cost. You need more food, more space, more stability. And the moment the environment changes, giants struggle first, because they can't adapt quickly, they can't hide, they can't shrink, and they definitely can't survive without enough resources. This is why most prehistoric giants disappeared. Not because they were weak, but because they were too specialized. They were built for a world that no longer existed. And when that world changed, they couldn't keep up. So where does that leave us today? Because giants didn't disappear completely. We still have elephants, giraffes, large predators, but nothing like before, nothing on the same scale. Because modern ecosystems are tighter, more competitive, more efficient, there's less room for something massive to exist without consequence. And there's another factor now. Us, humans. Large animals are easier to hunt, easier to track, easier to eliminate, and because of that, the largest creatures today are often the most vulnerable. So prehistoric land wasn't just full of giants by chance. It was a perfect storm. Warm climates, abundant food, low competition, and constant evolutionary pressure, all pushing life in one direction, bigger and bigger and bigger, until the system collapsed. Because gigantism isn't stable, it's temporary, a peak. And once you reach the peak, there's only one direction left, down. But the pattern never truly ends, because evolution doesn't stop. It just waits for the right conditions to try again. And if the world ever becomes like that again, you might not recognize what comes next, because the next giants won't be the same as the last ones. They never are. And if you want to see how evolution creates something just as terrifying, but in a completely different way, check out the next video. Because being big is only one way to survive.